trend. That trend doesn't necessarily warrant a headline, but it's a modest indication of a possible sign of some good news. But again, we have to be mindful of what we're walking into over the course of the next number of days into Christmas holiday season, more broadly defined. And so I just wanted to lead with that and remind you again, number that I began with, that devastating number of 361 families that have been torn apart, lives lost, families that will not be with their loved ones this holiday season, the inability to make a phone call to wish someone well and to get someone on the other end of that call. This disease remains deadly. This pandemic remains deadly. And the virulency of this disease, self-evidently, you're seeing as it relates to the mutation around the world now, not just in the UK. We're seeing now that mutation appearing in other parts of the globe only reinforces the importance, the imperative of our individual actions, the collective actions, the common sense that we need to bring into this holiday season as we appropriately celebrate this holiday season. Remind people, and forgive me for the extended point, and we'll now turn it over here in a second, that it's important to address your mental health. It's important to be mindful in every way, shape, or form, to get fresh air, to do as much as you can outdoors, and to get exercise, and check in on people you love, check in on yourself, and be there even if you can't be physically there for those in need. And so again, more and more outdoor focus, outdoor activity, exercise, mindfulness, be more sensitive, perhaps now as supportive as you possibly can be to not only friends, family, but even strangers. And this is the holiday season, and I saw so many of my staff members yesterday out there contributing their time and attention to Cal Volunteers. You can learn how you can volunteer on the Cal Volunteers site, or go to that covid19.ca.gov website and learn how you can volunteer at food banks and other safe volunteering opportunities. It's also a big part of the communitarian spirit, which is part of the holiday spirit as well. Final update, 128,210 doses of the vaccine have been formally administered so far to date in the state. That's numbers from yesterday. So they lag a little bit, but you get a sense of the flywheel where we are getting these vaccines and we are getting them out and increasingly into remote and rural parts of the state, always mindful of equity and always mindful of where you are in the queue. At 2 o'clock today, between 2 and we believe is 2 to 4, we have our guidelines advisory committee meeting publicly. You can tune in on the covid19.ca.gov website. The advisory committee is meeting with the guidelines work group on Plan 1B, and that's the next cohort that will be prioritized to get more vaccines. First cohort of the 128,000, again, healthcare workers and those in congregate facilities. The next phase includes essential workers and includes food workers. It includes a much broader universe of individuals, including seniors 75 and over. That public discussion will be held 2 o'clock today. So forgive me again the long-windedness. Thought it was important to update all of you on those important statistics and data, but also to now take advantage a little bit of this, exciting moment in at least California history and policy, not just politics. Two extraordinary people that I've known for many, many years, and two people I've admired from afar when I only knew them professionally, and through their reputation and their extraordinary hard work. I'll begin by introducing and asking Alex Padilla, your current Secretary of State, who we announced yesterday will be the next U.S. Senator from the state of California when Vice President-elect Kamala Harris is sworn in to the United States Senate after she's sworn in. Alex Padilla will have that privilege of serving the remainder of her term as representative of the state of California to the United States Senate. Many of you know Alex well. I've known Alex for years and years and years. I knew him, again, reputationally as the youngest president of the city council down in Los Angeles. I think he was just 25 or 26 years young when he ascended that position, to his incredible work that he did as a state senator here in Sacramento, representing his district down in the Los Angeles region. The incredible work he has done, not just as Secretary of State over the course of many, many years, but truly in contemporary terms, as of late, conducting this historic election, which he did magnificently, this all mail-in ballot election supplemented with in-person voting opportunities, the work he's done to improve accessibility, transparency, and the accountability within the Secretary of State's office, his partnerships with the community, as well as his partnerships with the legislature, also have not gone unnoticed. Person of character, decency, integrity, great intellect, MIT after all, and someone I called as a friend and a wonderful family man as well. And so it's a great pleasure, privilege to introduce you the next U.S. Senator from the state of California, Alex Padilla.
Thank you, Governor. It's still sinking in, but excited and eager for this next chapter and opportunity to make you proud and make all Californians proud to go fight for us in the U.S. Senate. So again, thank you for this. It's a tremendous honor, and I'm humbled by it. First things first, for the folks who saw how that now viral video started. You and I talking about our kids jumping up and down in the back. Thankfully, Angela has heeded your advice to take them outside and go get some exercise. So we got a few minutes of quiet in the house right now. But, and also want to kind of point out that, man, you knew how to pull my heartstrings when you asked me the question the other day. And while the video snippets only make a quick reference to my folks, I did want to share a little bit more for everybody's benefit and why that means so much to me. My parents came to the United States from Mexico, as millions have, right? This is an American dream story, not unique to the Padilla family. My father, with a very limited education, spent 40 years in a kitchen working as a short order cook. And for the same 40 years, my mom used to clean houses. She was the lucky one. She had a chance to finish grade school before going to work to help her family. And to think that through their sacrifice and struggle and hard work, they raised 3 children. They have an older sister who's been in education for many years, from TA to teacher to principal, now working for the Los Angeles Unified School District, and a younger brother who works for city council president in Los Angeles. So we're all in public service, and that's not a coincidence. But it hits home because of the struggle and sacrifice I saw growing up. I see it in so many families trying to live their American dream and struggling to do so. And that was prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Right? The pandemic has only exacerbated what we think of who's an essential worker, who's not. We see who has the luxury of being able to work remotely versus who isn't, who's been able to keep their job versus who's been laid off. We have some families struggling with this homeschooling environment versus those that may have better digital literacy or access skills. And so all that is not lost in me, because I can relate. And I think it's an important perspective to bring short term to the next iterations of COVID relief and stimulus coming out of Congress in the new year. I know they just recently acted on a measure to support families and some small businesses, but it's helpful for now. But the end of the pandemic is nowhere near. The vaccines are rolling, as you mentioned, Governor, but by the time we reach critical mass in terms of its distribution, we need to make sure it's equitable distribution, because we know which communities and which individuals are more predisposed, at higher risk, either of contracting COVID or to suffer more severe impacts of COVID. All this is complex, but important important perspective to bring to short-term COVID response by Congress, but also to keep in mind as we tackle some of the longer-term issues, like making sure everybody has access to quality healthcare, making sure that we not only tackle climate change globally, but address environmental justice along the way, and that we make our democracy and our economy more inclusive. So again, just want to thank you tremendously for this opportunity, make you proud by being a fierce advocate for working families throughout the state of California. Angela, the boys and I just thank you again for the honor, and I'm ready to get to work. And if you'll indulge me just a few words in Spanish, because I know there's some Spanish language press that are tuning in. Quiero tomar esta oportunidad de darle las gracias al gobernador por la confianza que ha puesto en mí, nombrándome como el próximo senador federal para representar California, el primer latino en la historia de California para representarnos en el Senado federal. Con orgullo y humildad voy a traer mi experiencia, la experiencia de mi familia, mis padres inmigrantes a este país que trabajaron tanto, han sacrificado tanto para realizar su sueño americano. Y sé que hay millones de familias haciendo lo mismo, trabajando duro, tratando de contribuir a este país, a la economía y a la sociedad, sufriendo tiempos difíciles debido a la pandemia. Crean y tengan confianza que voy a llevar esta experiencia, este punto de vista a cada negociación, cada acción en el Congreso como su senador federal comenzando en enero. Muchísimas gracias, gobernador. Thank you again, Governor. Appreciate it so much, and great selection on Secretary of State. Looking forward to handing the baton off to a civil rights and voting rights champion, but I'll let you make the formal introduction.
I love it. But it's a great segue. And again, thank you for, thank you for being, being willing to put yourself out there at this critical moment and in this critical time in history. And also thank you, as you were just noting, making history as well. I say this as always a point of pride. California is the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. 27% of the state in the last census was identified as foreign born, 27%, a majority minority state. It's a point of pride, our capacity to live and advance together across every conceivable difference. But we'd never had a Latino U.S. Senator, and you will be that first. And we are indeed proud of that. It's long overdue. But with the spirit of firsts in mind and the spirit of advancing the cause, as you rightfully identify, which is the cause that has been a big part of Dr. Shirley Weber's life, the issues of economic justice, racial justice, social justice, environmental justice, rights broadly defined. It's a remarkable moment as well, a first in history of an African-American woman who's now the next secretary, will certainly be the next Secretary of State, at first in California's history, but someone who's well known because she's well defined as a fierce advocate for the voiceless, as someone who formerly was in a role of incredible influence and authority as a professor at San Diego State, someone who served as a school board member, eventually, of course, service in the California legislature, out front and the leading and cutting edge of legislation, but legislation that was tough, legislation that others didn't want to take on, legislation that often fell short, but was never denied because of Dr. Weber's commitment, her resolve, her passion, her conviction, and her character as well. Another extraordinary life story and another extraordinary human being. I'm so privileged, so blessed to have been, just momentarily being put in this position to be able to ask you, Alex, to pass that baton to Dr. Weber as the next Secretary of State. And so it's with that, I'll pass now the proverbial mic and turn it over to the next Secretary of State of California, Dr. Shirley Weber.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Alex, as well. I want to thank you, Governor, for this very unique opportunity that I have to basically begin a new chapter in my life and a new chapter in the life of my family in terms of advocating for the beliefs that we've had all our lives with regards to the right of individuals to have everything they need, whether it's education, the right to vote, the right to move about, and to be free to express the things in their lives that are really important. And I'm just honored that you've asked me to take on this challenge. I want to congratulate Alex, who for years has worked with me in the Capitol with regards to the legislation that we've authored and making sure that the right to vote was always there, not only for those who we generally give it to, but those who had been incarcerated and didn't know they had the right to vote. And he fought along with us on a number of cases to ensure thousands and thousands of individuals to right to vote. So this is an extremely important issue for me. And I'm so grateful. My family is in awe of it. My brothers and sisters, we came to California because my dad was going to be lynched in Arkansas, Hope, Arkansas. And I always say I'm from Hope, which was a city that had no hope for Black people. And my grandfather never got a chance to vote because he died before the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And my dad never voted until he came to California in the 50s. And so that was always important to him, not being able to go to school, having limited education, limited opportunities. He instilled that in his 8 children. He made clear that we knew that those things were extremely important. Going to school, doing the best you could, but also exercising your right to vote. And so for years on 45th and Broadway, 351 West 45th Street, my house was the polling place of Los Angeles for that particular precinct. My dad was so proud. My mom was so proud. And as a family, we knew on election day, go through the back door because people are voting in the living room. And that was just a part of our culture, that we value the vote. And all of my brothers and sisters register to vote. We continue to vote. Our kids vote. And so we know that voting is important. And so to be given the opportunity to be able to somehow or another do things that my family only dreamed about, that my father never thought in his lifetime would ever happen, that his daughter would be the person and the Secretary of State whose responsibility was to ensure the integrity of voting in California, to make sure that everyone had that right and that right was protected. And so I look at that, and my mother would have been 100 years old this year, and my dad, and so they would have probably just been so proud because of what they instilled in us, this value for education and this value for the right to vote. And so I'm honored. I'm honored to be to have been asked to do this. My grandkids are just in awe. They say there's 2 people that live in our house. There's their grandmother, and then there's this lady who they say who has power. And that's what my 9-year-old grandson talks about as he sees what he thinks is the transition that occurs between the grandma who makes the cookies and the woman who stands up and makes the speeches. But I just want to say I'm very proud to be here, and I take this responsibility very seriously because it is a serious position, and it has tremendous opportunities for us to continue the legacy that's been established as California has in these very difficult times where people are challenging the right to vote, challenging our system itself, and trying to destroy our democracy. That we have to have folks who believe in it. We have to have folks who stand up for it. And my history and my family knows what it is like when people deny you that right. They know what happens when people challenge the fairness and the transparency of systems. My family has lived that. And so for me, I am always the person who looks at every aspect of freedom and justice and makes sure that we are dotting every I and crossing every T. Because when we get lax and when we forget who we are, we then make ourselves very vulnerable, and we destroy the system that has been the hallmark of trying to create fairness and justice. We're not perfect, but we know that we're striving for a more perfect union. And so I am really honored that you've asked me to be the voice, the administrator, the person who's the keeper of California's voting rights and its seal and those things that are so central to who we are. And I am eager to take on this new challenge and know that it will be a tremendous challenge, but one that is part of my soul, part of my spirit. And I thank you so very much. And I wish you, Alex, all the success in DC. I will truly be calling you regularly, not just about SOS, but all the other things that we want to do for California. Thank you so very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Doctor. And I'll turn it over anybody has questions here in a moment, but I think if you have a question, ask me why. I think you just found out why. I was privileged to offer these positions on the basis of these vacancies to these two extraordinary individuals. And for me, again, at the end of the day, of course, competency matters. Of course, technical expertise matters, but character matters as well. Good human beings that have a default that is other people oriented, not self oriented. And I think these two people are exemplars of that. And those values have been demonstrable in their careers and will be in these new positions. So I am incredibly humbled, gratified, and very honored. Thank you both for the privilege of being with us together. And with that, let's turn it over if anyone has any questions of any of us.
Jimmy Hua, Associated Press.
Hey, Governor. I've got two questions here. The health department says it will soon permit all facilities led by hospitals in Power 1 start using crisis care guidelines. When do you expect hospitals to begin having duration care and under what circumstances? This includes postponing elective procedures, which the state kept voluntary in the spring. Why not make it mandatory given the staffing crisis now? And separately, models for the R-effective show the transmission rate has slowed markedly in the last 2 weeks. What did that tell you? And are more people heeding calls to change their behavior? Thank you.
Yeah, I think the regional stay-at-homers had an impact. As I say, it's still too early to tell. That 13.3% peak that we experienced under the 7-day positivity rate, now having dropped the fourth day in a row, is encouraging. And as you note, they are effective as well, particularly outside of the LA region. That's a point of some optimism, but still caution, because the first part of your question is sobering, isn't it? And that's crisis standards of care and the question of when do we adopt it and how do we apply it? That question was posed to our Crisis Care Advisory Committee that was tasked many, many months ago to put out those standards of care. We went through a very deliberative process, a very public process to establish those standards. And yesterday they convened yet again to update their communication and their deliberation on the same. The answer to your question, nuance, is site by site. It's specific. For example, I was talking today to Dr. Galley. We just were comparing census at MLK Hospital down in LA versus Cedars-Sinai in LA, and the unique makeup, the distinctions between the two in terms of population, in terms of those that are admitted in ICUs and hospitals that are COVID positive, the distinctions within cities, within counties, within regions, which will require a nuance and require more specificity in terms of answering your question of when and how these crisis standards of care are adopted and advanced. But look, encouraging news on the R-effective. It's still too early to tell. We have experienced the surge on top of the surge from Thanksgiving. And obviously the most important message that we can communicate today is to do everything in our power to mitigate the spread and the transfer of this virus during this very vulnerable period of time, because this virus loves social events. This virus thrives in that atmosphere. It thrives indoors. It thrives when there's a lack of ventilation. It thrives when we're proximate to one another. It thrives when we extend the duration of time with people outside of our households. And so we must do everything in our power to mitigate those conditions and to ultimately drive this virus and extend our time and opportunity to administer more doses of the vaccine and to allow for the extension of the time to patient care. And that goes to your final point. Forgive me for the long-windedness, but 3 parts of your question. And that is the importance of staffing and the importance of decompressing our hospital system. You referenced it in the context of elected surgeries. I'll broaden it to scheduled surgeries. You're already seeing hospitals, you're seeing systems, you're seeing already based upon trends, based upon the specific conditions that exist and persist or are projected within those systems and hospitals. You're already seeing significant reduction in elected and scheduled surgeries. We are in constant communication with hospital leaders and with the system itself. And so far, we don't feel we need to mandate that, as these individuals, these organizations, these leaders are making appropriate choices. We have waivers on staffing, which I know is difficult and stressful, particularly on our extraordinary nurses. And we've seen those waivers exercised and those staff ratios providing more flexibility. And you're seeing now surge plans, not just on the ICUs, but also we're starting to see the capacity plans that were put into place many, many months ago begin to be put into place as it relates to physical extension of existing spaces on existing hospital footprints, meaning tents starting to go up in and around parking lots, parts of hospitals that were not used for ICUs now being used for ICUs, all the flex planning that's been done over the course of many, many months now starting to take shape in anticipation of this moment, in anticipation of the next few weeks.
Tiffany Stecker, Bloomberg News.
Hi, thank you. This is a question for Secretary Padilla. Mr. Padilla, could you tell us what committees you hope to serve on in the Senate? Are you expected to fill Senator Harris's thoughts on those committees, and which ones would you like to be on?
Yeah, no, great question. As the announcement is still fresh, so is this a transition process. So that's definitely on the list of things to think through. But I can offer this. Just yesterday afternoon, did have an opportunity to speak with Minority Leader Schumer, and he just offered his congratulations, and we put a pin in some time this weekend to circle back and have those kinds of conversations as well. So I know it's a process. It'll be a combination of committees that not just are of interest to me in terms of issues, but more importantly are the most relevant and impactful for California. And the starting point is looking at where Senator Harris is currently as she's vacating, and where Senator Feinstein is, because it's going to be important for both U.S. senators to work as collaboratively and as effectively to deliver for the state. So still to be determined, not hiding anything from you, but as it evolves, I'll certainly be sharing it at the appropriate time.
That's great.
Paul Sisson, San Diego Union Tribune.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call. I had a question about the federal medical stations. I understand that these stations are not equipped to provide intensive care. It sounds like there's some sort of step-down unit. So how does the state expect these federal medical stations to take pressure off the ICUs if they can't provide ICU care?
They ultimately are part of a stacked system of care, which allows us to decompress, allows us more flexibility within the existing footprints within the hospitals themselves. As I noted, we're starting to see rooms that weren't traditionally used for ICU purpose being repurposed for ICU. Of course, we have pressure then on the incoming with people that's still in hospital beds, not in ICU, not intubated, not necessarily in that acute care need, where we can decompress, we can take advantage of these FMS sites, these alternative care facilities, and they come in many different flavors, so to speak, not just the field medical stations, but you've got the old sleep train arena, where we have COVID positive patients that are currently there that are taking pressure off the hospitals in the region. So each Fairview, Porterville, each one of these alternative care facilities has a unique contribution that impacts the stacking of prioritizations, patients, and utilization within the existing hospital footprints. The biggest issue remains, and I'll just remind everybody of this, it's staffing. And that's why we remain very aggressive in our posture of requesting support from the Department of Defense. We updated you 48 hours ago on some of those specific asks. We are actually talking to the incoming administration and their point their COVID point people about our needs so we can hit the ground running when the new administration is sworn in. We continue to maintain very strong working relationship with the president's office and with the vice president himself, who's been very accommodating as it relates to additional staffing. As you know, we are providing CalGuard staffing. We're trying to utilize our existing staff as well as the health corps staff in terms of providing additional relief. We also are hopeful, a little bit of a preview, we're hopeful that the holidays for everybody, it makes it difficult because people have already pre-planned their time away. Maybe this is their vacation time, maybe it's with their family or loved ones. And we are hopeful that the first week of January, we'll actually be able to get more contract staff. We're able to actually access more staffing at a critical time in a week or so as well. So we're playing around with all those staffing needs. But the FMS site is really about decompressing the rest of the system.
Alex Michelson, Fox 11.
Thank you, Governor, and congratulations to you both. Governor, you mentioned this concept that character counts. In a state with 40 million people, you have a lot of qualified people to choose between. I know you and especially Secretary Padilla have been good friends for a long time. Can you reflect on what your relationship with each of them, what that's informed you about them as people, and how you think that translates to both your decision-making process and to how the job performance will be going forward?
I think, well, first of all, thank you for that question, because it's a thoughtful question and it deserves a thoughtful response. You know, the thing that separates, I'm former county supervisor, former mayor, two-term lieutenant governor, now governor. I've been at this a long time. I've got to know people I've admired, respect from afar, got to know them a little bit better, and lost a little bit of that admiration because I sensed there was for them about power and prestige more than it was about doing their job. I think they wanted to be something more than they wanted to do something. What I think, honestly, truly, we wouldn't be here together. Full stop. If I didn't believe these two individuals were different than that, that they're here to do something, not be something. I've seen it up close. I mean, I've seen it just in contemporary terms with Dr. Weber on a police use of force bill, where, it was a year ago that the state established one of the most progressive police use of force bills in the nation. This is before the George Floyd tragedy. And I'd watched Dr. Weber from afar, but I had a chance now to work with her directly. And just you characters define in one's actions, not just in public, but in private. Her conviction, her congruency wasn't intellectual, it was emotional, but it was also strategic. Her ability to get things done, doers, not just dreamers. That's someone of character and someone of conviction and someone whose default is about you and me and others, not just about herself. I've seen it in Alex Padilla for decades, where we walk the streets together. We walk precincts for other causes, where I've seen it in his interaction with his kids. That's the true test of someone's character. It's reflected back in the eyes of their children, his wife, the experience we both had. I lost my father a few weeks after he lost his mother 2 years ago. In those conversations, and those are very personal and very raw, and you get to, someone reveals themselves in those moments. And of course, this incredible work, this heroic work, with the scale of what he just accomplished in terms of this election in the nation's most populous state. Again, I'm blessed, and I think you should feel blessed that we have two remarkable Californians that are now in positions where they can impact your life, impact our lives, and impact the lives of millions and millions of people that, frankly, I felt a little forgotten. Felt like they were not on the front of the line, but the back of the line. And I can't tell you how many people called me when they say they saw themselves in that conversation when Alex started talking about his mom and dad and that just meant the world to me, just because it means the world to them. And I know you all heard that a moment ago with Dr. Weber, that same spirit, same pride that comes through, just knowing that they're going to be now elevated in their positions of influence.
Jeremy White, Politico.
Hey, Governor and others, thanks for joining us today. Dr. Weber, a lot of folks are curious to know about how your selection will play into the 2022 election, given that there are multiple other people who have also already declared Secretary of State campaigns. So I'm hoping you can tell us if it is your intention to run for re-election in 2022.
Yes, it is my intention to run for re-election in 2022. I don't take on a task just to be someone who holds down the fort while something else is going on. There are a lot of things we started in California in terms of voting, and I was a part of some of those things, and we'll continue that. So I expect we will run a very active and aggressive campaign. And while we're also learning the job and doing some things that are really important that have to be done. So I anticipate that I will run in 2022 for the position for the full term. There are colleagues who also have an interest in that, and I understand that, and they have a right to run if they choose to. But I do plan to run in 2022.
And Alex, just for the purposes of answering that question for you as well, what's your intention?
Absolutely. The big issues, big challenges that we're about to tackle, we know require a longer term commitment. So I've been making that signal very clear, not just to you, Governor, but to all Californians. I'm in this for the long haul. So I will look forward to, hitting the ground running quickly, making the case and earning California voter support in 2022.
Ashley Zavala, Nexstar Media Group.
Hi, Governor. This week we've seen a lot of other governors get their vaccination shots, and I was wondering when you might be getting yours.
When the guidelines work group makes an independent adjudication as to when I should, when it's appropriate. Someone my age, of my vulnerability, whatever that may be, and not before. That's just my personal choice. I think it's important, and I appreciate. I don't begrudge those in elected office that have gotten the vaccination. In fact, in many ways, I applaud that because it's important to show folks that it's safe and it's efficacious. But for me, there's just simply too many people that contact me personally and contact my office desperate for the vaccine. And I honestly, in good conscience, I just can't get ahead of them in getting vaccinated.
Ben Christopher, Cal Matters.
Hi there. Thanks so much to all of you for taking the time to take my call. So this is a question for both Secretary Padilla and Dr. Weber. The $35 million contract with SKD Knickerbocker remains unresolved as far as I know. So ultimately, which of the two of you will be responsible for resolving that? And who's going to pay? Where's the money going to come from? Thanks very much.
I'll go first if that's all right. So a couple of things just to make sure we put the question in the proper context. We're referring to as a contract to help run a nonpartisan voter education campaign as we conducted the November general election, which was not only important, it was mandated, written into the Budget Act of 2020-2021, passed by the legislature, signed by the governor. We made a lot of changes to how we administer the November election. As we all know, every registered voter in California received a vote by mail ballot, but we still opened in-person voting with all the public health protocols that California voters would not have to choose between exercising their right to vote and protecting their health and that of their loved ones. So voter education was key to letting voters know what those options were. The mandated program contract was properly negotiated and entered into, signed off not just by the vendor, but General Services and others. The only real question here is which account is it going to be paid out of? That's where there's some technical questions and disagreement that will still be resolved. If we really want to go into the weeds here, the issue of concern for some is whether the Secretary of State's office should have spent some of this funding on behalf of counties overseeing voter education, to which I would remind folks there's plenty of precedent for that. When the Secretary of State's office streamlined translation of election and voting materials consistent with the Voting Rights Act, for example, nobody raised any questions. Nobody raised any concerns. When we knew we'd have to help coordinate the procurement of PPE for all the in-person voting locations throughout the state of California, that's a gargantuan task in a short amount of time. We did that on behalf of counties with their full support and appreciation. No problems, no questions. But all of a sudden, when it comes to having facilitated voter education so people could participate and stay healthy in November 2020, all of a sudden now there's a question. I just wanted to put your question in the proper context. It will be resolved soon, no doubt. Controller's office, Department of Finance, everybody's sharpening the pencils and working it out.
Padilla and Ms. Yee work it out. They're very competent administrators in their own office, and so I'm confident that they will resolve it. We were not involved, at least personally, I was not, and so I am confident that they will handle the issue, and that's very complex as he has explained it. That they will handle it.
Yeah, and just know we're working with legislative leadership and finance, and we'll get that paid.
Yeah.
Sophia Balog, Sacramento Bee.
Sorry, Sophia, we can't hear you.
The president signed the economic relief bill that Congress has passed. How soon can EDV pay those people their benefits?
Well, we hope to get those checks out as quickly as possible. Part of it's a system now that is well defined in terms of the UI being extended for 11 weeks if indeed the president signs it. The additional supplement at $600, though we'd love to see $2,000. I appreciate Speaker Pelosi being willing to take the president at his word, and that, by the way, represents if you see a $2,000 supplemental payment to people in that category, it's upwards of $60 billion that being infused in the state of California versus about $18 billion with those $600 checks. But our capacity to do that is substantially better than it was because we've been able to significantly address the backlog of cases with the reboot and the ID.me system to deal with the vulnerability of fraud in the EDD program, particularly with the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, distinguished from the unemployment insurance payments. So systems set up. We look forward to having clarity, and we'll get those supplemental payments out similarly to what we did briefly with those supplemental payments where California did take a leadership position and didn't criticize or critique that support. We actually took advantage of that additional support for a number of weeks with those supplemental payments during the summer, the latter part of the summer. So they're ready to go. We're eager to get the signature from the president, unless indeed he wants to increase those direct payments, which would indeed be encouraging.
Patrick Healy, NBC4.
Hi, Governor. A quick question following up on your comments earlier in the week about the new strain from England. Have you given any further thought to tightening quarantine requirements at the major California hospitals, as I guess San Francisco and Santa Clara have done on a county basis? Thank you.
Yeah, we have. We're looking for a more universal travel policy. So I'm previewing it a little bit for you. We're very close to making that public. That includes PSAs. It includes information campaign, including the pursuit. And this gets more complicated, and this is why we haven't announced it yet. Just some in-flight information, some reservation lodging information if you're indeed going to travel for essential business purposes, that there's some confirmation as it relates to travel advisory being abided by. We have an advisory in place, but we are working with local health officers to potentially tighten that up. In addition, I should just note an extension to your question, we have been in contact with not only Virgin Atlantic, but also Delta and their partnerships. They have the direct flights from Heathrow into LAX. And as you may know, I'm not sure it's universally known, but it seems to have gotten out there that by Thursday, tomorrow, they'll be requiring negative tests for all flights, not just on the East Coast, but also here on our coast. And so that's encouraging news as well. So more information forthcoming in this space. Answer is yes, we're looking to tighten those travel advisories up.
Final question, Brody Lebec, LA Blade.
Good afternoon, Governor, Dr. Weber, and Secretary Padilla. On behalf of myself as the editor of the Los Angeles Blade and my publisher, congratulations to you both. Secretary Padilla, you have been a long-time ally of our community, so this is really cool to see you in the Senate seat. Dr. Weber, I have a quick question for you. Governor Newsom, in this last election cycle, working with Secretary Padilla, did just a massive job of getting the mail-in ballots out to California voters. Participation was incredibly high. But one of the areas that, of course, is going to be of overriding concern and continuing concern will be, of course, our minority voters in the state of California, particularly in our Black and Brown communities, as well as our LGBTQ communities. Have you given any thought to continuing on the initiatives that Secretary Padilla as he has already laid out, and further guidance, of course, from Governor Newsom? And again, congratulations to you both.
Well, thank you. The good thing is I once chaired the election committee in the assembly, and I still serve on the elections and redistricting committee. So many of the ideas and new plans that Mr. Padilla put in place came through our committee. And I supported those efforts to talk about everyone getting a mail-in ballot, and to working with the various minority communities to ensure that they would vote, to make sure our high school students were being registered early, and all those kinds of things. I've worked on those things with Mr. Padilla. He's come to San Diego, and we've done some meetings together at high schools and various places. So I'm very supportive of what we did. I'm very proud of the election that took place, the new things that were put in place. We want to surely increase of that participation. I think, getting out there and making sure that all of the communities, the ethnic communities, as well as others, to know that they have various options for voting is really, really important. And so I've been very pleased with what we saw with the last election. As a member of our election committee in the assembly, we'll hope to be able to look at what we've done, expand on it, make it even better. And we've seen record turnouts in voting, and every Californian should be excited about what we've done, because I can remember the times when we were praying for 50% of the people to vote, or 40% or 30%. Well, I'd look at certain communities and it'd be 20%. And I spent most of my time in the assembly pushing my district, particularly the 79th, a very diverse district, to make sure that we were always up there in terms of voter turnout. So I'm excited about the fact that we figured it out. We're beginning to figure out most of it, and that we work on a time when we will have as much excitement as we had this year, if not more, around voting. That is extremely important. And there was a period of time when it was just ho-hum, here we come, an election day. And now people are excited about it and voting a week in advance and 2 weeks. That's what we need to do. I remember when South Africa had its first election, and we were just in awe of the people wrapped around the buildings wanting to vote for a week or two. And that was what the passion was missing in California and in this nation. So we're restoring it now. Record numbers of people voting across the country. We should be ecstatic that these folks finally realize just how important this democracy is, just how important their vote is, and that every Californian, every person in this nation who is eligible to vote should go to vote. So yes, I embrace what we've done. And we hope to be able to expand on it so that we at some point will have 100% of all of our registered voters actually voting in every election. That's my goal. You shoot for it, and you get, at least they say, if you shoot for the moon, you get off the ground. And that's what we plan to do.
I love that. Hey, Alex, you want to build on that a little bit? Let's get you off mute.
There we go. 10 months of quarantine, still good. I got to remember to unmute. Look, I think we have tremendous momentum going that I have no doubt soon to be Secretary Weber will continue to build on. I'll just call out a couple of things that have been part of the foundation now. Number one, a very low-key bill that went through the legislature a couple of years ago was signed into law now adds to the official duties and responsibilities of the Secretary of State to increase participation rates, right? What a concept. Prior to that bill, of course, the chief elections officer oversees the proper administration of elections, but there was no statutory mandate that you increase participation rates. Well, now there is, and specifically that language includes a special consideration for communities that have historically been underrepresented. And so that should be driving the initiatives and the efforts for the current Secretary of State administration and future administrations. And by the way, future legislatures can call those questions to see how those are being pursued. I'll give you another example, the tremendous success of automatic voter registration through DMV. Reason I think that's a profoundly powerful part of the legacy I'm glad to have. You know, prior to that, if you're eligible to vote in America today, but not registered, you don't get the state's voter information guide. If you're eligible to vote in America, but not registered, you don't get your county sample ballot. If you're eligible to vote in America, but not registered, chances are candidates and campaigns are not knocking on your door or calling you during dinner. So the sheer systematic adding of previously eligible but unregistered voters to the rolls creates a lot of that activity. And by the way, it's not just about numbers. Who is it that's disproportionately eligible but unregistered? It's been working class families. It's been communities of color. It's been a lot of young people. And those are the voices that we have disproportionately uplifted through these reforms in the last several years. So I appreciate the spirit of the question. I think we've done a lot in the last 6 years, but until we hit 100%, always more to do. And I have no doubt that Shirley Weber will bring that same philosophy and passion to this office.
You're here. Well, I not only appreciate the spirit of the question, I appreciate the spirit of the last hour. And again, thank you to Dr. Weber and thank you to Alex Padilla for all of their public service and all of their extraordinary work and leadership to date, and we're confident the best is yet to come. And I'll just close by reminding folks that if they wish to tune in an hour, 2:00 at the covid19.ca.gov website, learn more about our next phase of distribution of the vaccine, our Plan 1B, that will be publicly discussed. And I just want to close by just making a personal point that I think in the appointment of Alex Padilla, we've also proven another paradigm, and that is the willingness of this governor to work with people, even Dodger fans, in terms of elevating them to positions like you have said it. Oh, geez, you're rubbing it in further. Anyway, by the way, this is a big deal geographically as well. Dr. Weber, San Diego, Alex Padilla, Los Angeles. I know a lot of folks have had, there's a lot of Northern Californians statewide. So this is a nice thing as well.
Governor, if I can add just one last thing, appreciate what you said in terms of Secretary Weber's and my qualifications individually, but I do think it's important for everybody to observe. Part of your vision and selection is not just our individual preparation, but our commitment to working together, right? This is what all Californians deserve. Quality individual leaders, but just as importantly, elected leaders working together on their behalf. And I know that's what you and I have, what Dr. Weber has, and just a testament to you to keep all trains moving in the same direction to help California families.
Yeah, full disclosure, and forgive us, we'll zoom off here in a second, but I love right when we both came on, Dr. Weber, we were just talking, you're already engaged with Alex on transition issues. And again, we were commenting, isn't it great that you guys have a long-standing relationship? You've worked together on so many elections-related bills for years and years. And I appreciate that, Alex, the spirit of collaboration and cooperation.
Well, thank you all. Yes, appreciate it.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Take care. Safe.